You begin with a familiar thought. A mirror shows what is before it. It seems simple. You look, and an image appears. But what if the image is not something you see, but something seeing through you? Ibn Arabi questioned this basic assumption of perception. He taught that what we call seeing is not an act of a separate observer, but the real recognizing itself. What you think of as your awareness may not belong to you at all. In his view, there's only one act of knowing, the divine knowing itself through every form. If so, the phrase, your mirror, becomes a question rather than a thing. What if the mirror is not an object you use, but the very condition of existence itself? Ibn Arabi lived in 12th century Andalusia, a world shaped by philosophy, theology, and direct spiritual experience. Scholars sought truth through logic. Mystics sought it through unveiling. Ibn Arabi stood between both paths. He accepted reason but extended it to its limit, where separation dissolves. His doctrine of Wadat al-Wujd, the unity of being, declared that all things are modes of a single reality. The real does not exist apart from the world. It appears as the world. To understand what your mirror means is to recognize this, that the infinite becomes visible through the finite, without ever leaving its own essence. You live by a habit of division. There is you, and there is what you perceive. The separation feels necessary. It defines experience. Yet when you examine perception itself, something becomes unclear. The act of seeing cannot prove two existences. It only proves one awareness in which both observer and observed appear. Ibn Arabi said that this imagined distance is the veil that sustains ignorance. The real never becomes two. It only seems to. The mirror you believe belongs to you is not yours. It is the real's act of recognition, manifesting as the sense of individuality. So where, exactly, is the boundary between the one who sees and what is seen? For Ibn Arabi, the mirror is not a surface but a process, the process of awareness itself. Awareness has no identity. It allows every form to appear within it. You call some of these forms thought, others world, and one of them me. Yet awareness remains constant, untouched by what it contains. The one who claims ownership over awareness is itself another appearance within it. When you look carefully, ownership disappears. What remains is the act of knowing without a knower. In this sense, you are not the mirror's user, but its expression. Awareness reflects not something external, but the very fact of being conscious. If awareness belongs to no one, who is the one that says, I am aware? Ibn Arabi explained that the real manifests to make its hidden attributes knowable. Existence, then, is not a creation apart from the divine, but a disclosure of what the divine is. Each form, including you, reveals a unique quality of the infinite. The real appears as the image, yet remains unchanged by it. You may call yourself a person, but in truth, you are a function of divine recognition. The image you take to be yourself is a momentary expression of the real's self-knowing. Ibn Arabi's insight is precise. There is no creation that is not divine, no image that is not the real appearing. Still, if all are expressions of one being, why does every expression experience itself as separate? The illusion begins when awareness identifies with form. You say, I see, I think, I know. But these statements assume control over processes that arise by themselves. Thought appears. Attention moves. Recognition happens. None of these obey the will of a separate self. Ibn Arabi would say the real perceives through every form. The one who claims ownership is only another appearance within that same perception. To release ownership is not to lose individuality, but to see it as functional rather than ultimate. What you call you is an instrument of a larger intelligence. When that is seen, perception stops claiming to belong to anyone. What remains when awareness no longer calls itself mine? According to Ibn Arabi, the real reveals itself through countless names: mercy, power, wisdom, beauty, and each being expresses one or more of these attributes. Diversity is not an error. It is how the one becomes fully known. Each form contributes something irreplaceable to the total self-disclosure of reality. Humanity, then, is not a collection of isolated selves, but an arrangement of perspectives completing one vision. When you meet another, you do not encounter differences, but an undisclosed aspect of the same truth. To recognize this is to see the relationship itself as divine communication. The question that remains is subtle. If every being expresses the real, what does it mean to know yourself among them? For Ibn Arabi, self-knowledge and worship are not two acts but one. To know yourself as a reflection of the real is already an act of devotion. You are not required to search for the divine elsewhere, for each moment of awareness is the divine perceiving itself. Worship, then, is not performance but recognition, a still acknowledgement that seeing, thinking, and existing are sacred acts of disclosure. When you recognize this, prayer ceases to be an offering from one being to another. It becomes the quiet realization that there has never been separation. What, then, could worship aim toward if everything already worships by simply being what it is? As understanding deepens, the distinction between mirror and reflection fades. The awareness that observes and the forms observed are no longer opposites. They are aspects of one continuous act. There is no seer apart from seeing, no reflection apart from what reflects. This is not a mystical experience, but a clear realization. The subject-object structure of perception never truly existed. What dissolves is the assumption of distance. Ibn Arabi's insight leads to silence, not as absence, but as completion. When there is only awareness recognizing itself, the notion of your mirror becomes unnecessary. What was once a metaphor now points to pure being, thought without division, existence without ownership. You began by asking what the meaning of your mirror is. Now that question has turned inward and dissolved. There is no mirror to interpret, no image to compare. What you call the world, the self, and even thought are the real in its ceaseless act of self-recognition. Ibn Arabi's teaching ends in clarity, not mystery. There is only one awareness, endlessly expressing itself through forms that imagine themselves apart. To understand this is not to gain knowledge, but to lose the need for distinction. The one who searched for the meaning of the mirror was the mirror itself, reflecting the questioner as its own expression. In seeing this, thought grows quiet, and being simply knows itself. The script begins with the ordinary sense of perception as a private act and unfolds into Ibn Arabi's vision of the real recognizing itself through every form. What seems like individuality becomes participation in one awareness. Ownership dissolves into clarity. Diversity is seen as unity expressed. The journey is not toward mystical abstraction, but toward rational stillness. The understanding that there is no seer apart from seeing, no mirror apart from what reflects. In this final insight, the mind ceases to divide. And existence rests in the silent recognition that it has always been one act of knowing.